Lords and ladies of the Duchy, welcome to episode 8 of Duke's D&D Debauchery, as we continue to follow the story of our heroes on Renkaat in the Conduit. Where we last left our heroes, they had just exited from the dungeon that they had been venturing through that had a library at the very bottom of it, where they met with the Mother of Shadows, and they retrieved a rapier. And they had discovered that the ring that they had collected earlier, as well as the rapier, were both intelligent, and that they were both crafted by the same individual known as Hlifar. One of our characters, Gorstag, our changeling rogue, knows Hlifar. Hlifar is kind of like his granddad in a sense, but now that they have left this dungeon after collecting a couple of sets of books and lots of information, as well as making a whole bunch of deals, at least 3 of the characters making deals with the Mother of Shadows, and as they were leaving, they were greeted by the same pair of seekers that they had met on the road while they were traveling between the town of Fork back to Hetham. So as this conversation begins, Shivers is basically like, look, you can come with me, or peacefully, or we will take you with us. They had basically put a wall of force behind them so that they could no longer continue, they could no longer go back into the basement of the School for the Blind. Thankfully, from my point of view as the DM, they decided to peacefully go with Shivers and Masoli to wherever it is that Shivers and Masoli was taking them. As the party is leaving, they make eye contact with the headmaster, kind of shrugs his shoulders and is like, well, there's not really anything that I can do. And so they follow Shivers and Masoli, and as they're leaving the School for the Blind, outside is 50 fully armored city guard, ready to apprehend them if necessary. So, not that they were in a position really probably to deal with Shivers and Masoli in combat, but they were definitely not ready to deal with the city guard that was outside. So, but they are taken not in bonds or anything, but flanked kind of by some of these city guards with Shivers and Masoli leading them. They are allowed to keep all of their items and their weapons and things of that nature as they are taken into the Citadel proper for questioning. So the way that the town is set up, it's been just to give everyone a reminder, is that you've got the outer wall, then you've got the inner wall that defines the inner city, and then the Citadel itself is where the council actually runs the kingdom from, as well as one of the floors, or one of the wings in particular, has the Seekers' headquarters in it. And so they get taken, and they each get put into individual rooms and are each individually interviewed. So we started with Dox. Dox actually possessed the ring. We go through kind of this whole thing where Dox is trying to avoid questions. The way that this interrogation is set up is that Shivers is the one who is asking the questions, and you have Shivers is a roughly 6.5 foot tall, dark pink skinned tiefling with a shock of white hair atop his head, and the horns that he has kind of from just in front of his, just kind of above and in front of where his temples are, and they follow neatly along, with a little bit of a gap, but neatly along his skull. And Masoli is a female Aasimar. She's a little bit short for a female Aasimar in this portion of the universe, only about 5'10". She has shaved her head bald, and her left eye is not the same natural eye. It appears to be made of stone, and there appears to be small cracks in it that are filled with gemstone of some fashion or another. They move. That's the other interesting thing, is that the cracks themselves move around this ball of stone. And so basically it's a simple set of questions. Who are you? What are you doing here? Are you familiar with the ring that the kingdom is searching for? Obviously they have to answer yes. And the reason that they do is because Masoli, who's standing, so Shivers is sitting down at the table talking to the individual, talking to the party member, Docs in this case at the very start, and Masoli is kind of sitting off in the corner, just leaned up against the wall, and she is smoking her signature cigar, and she is just listening. This interrogation room is set up with a couple of things that are built particularly by Masoli for each of the individuals. The players are told that there is a feeling as they walk into the room is that they no longer hear the shuffling of anything outside of the room. So there's a zone of silence that encapsulates the room itself as to not let anything bleed over. And then the other thing is that they feel as they are getting questioned, they have this feeling that I had them make wisdom or charisma saving throws, I forget which, but they had to make saving throws in order to basically realize whether or not, in order to overcome the challenge that is Masoli's zone of truth. So this is not a zone of truth in the typical way that D&D 5th edition runs it. I stole this zone of truth out of Pathfinder, out of the Inquisitor class, because that is what Masoli is. And so the curious thing about Inquisitor, for those not familiar, is that their zone of truth, if you lie and you fail to meet the DC, and Masoli, the Inquisitor, knows that you lie, guess what? You're going to take damage. It actually hurts you to lie inside this zone of truth. And so that is basically the method that happens. And so it's interesting when you have one wielder of basically mental magic in an arcane form against the natural psionic ability of Docs, and that's just kind of how it played out. That was the first character that was interviewed, but Docs eventually is broken down enough by Masoli that she has to reveal too much. She reveals enough information, and Masoli basically is like, okay, start going through your bags. And as Masoli is investigating all of this stuff, her eye picks up the enchantment that is on the ring that Docs is currently wearing, and the eye that she wears is a unique mechanic that I have added for my homebrews that is called Arcane Sight. And what it allows the wielder to be able to do is that it's basically like you have a detect magic spell on 24/7 cast at an exceptionally high level. So you're able to identify objects that are magical. You're able to understand the school, while you might not necessarily understand the specific spell depending on what's going on, but you are able to see magic itself being cast and its effect on the world. So like the flow of the ley lines across worlds, and like if someone is casting like invisibility, you can see the rune that gives them invisibility, or whatever the remnants of that arcane energy are. You're able to see that with Arcane Sight. And so Masoli is basically very quickly able to identify the ring that she's wearing is enchanted, and then put the pieces together and say, that's the ring that we're looking for. The problem that Masoli and Shivers run into is that these people are sent specifically on a quest by the king, and they, as members of the Seekers, are not able to interfere with people who are marked by the king basically as his official messengers. That is the mark that they were given as they were bound to the king in their covenant that they made with him back at the Summer Palace. That is, at this point, the only thing keeping Shivers and Masoli from stealing that ring from them. They are very much unable to actually do the things that they threatened to do previously. And this kind of comes up where I rolled this behind the screen, but after the ring is identified, Shivers attempts a sleight of hand check to be able to take the ring from Dox as he is helping her put things back into her bag. And as he tries this, he immediately fails the check and feels kind of a pain at the back of his skull. I had him roll deception as well to see if he would give off any signs of this. He rolled high enough for the passive perception of Dox that she was unable to notice, but Masoli's perception was high enough that she was able to detect that, okay, yes, he tried to steal the ring. He was unable to get the ring. Something else must be going on. She then looks more intently at Dox, and then she's then able to see basically the brand. Because one of the interesting thing about the Seekers is that the Seekers are bound to the law. Literally, the law is written onto their bones as they are raised into the ranks of the Seekers. And so that has very, very intense ties to the things that it is that they do. So while they are the secret police of this kingdom, they also do have to stay within the legal realms of what the charter itself that binds the kingdom are. So then basically all of the rest of these interviews proceed because they already know that they have the ring. The one interview that goes a little bit different is Gorstag, because basically when asked where Gorstag is from, he replies Farmatting. At this point, Masoli basically kicks Shivers out and is like, I'm going to take this guy by myself. And the reason for this is that the eye that she has is the same as one of the eyes that Hlifar has that gives him arcane sight as well. And she got this eye from Hlifar. So she is familiar with the Changeling, she's familiar with Hlifar, and the fact that Gorstag knows about Farmatting tells her that, okay, this is a member of the Brood. Basically, I as Masoli am comfortable conversing with this individual because there aren't any rebels. Everyone from the Brood kind of like, they know that they're trustworthy. So Masoli herself is not a member of the Brood. She is just an Aasimar. There's some backstory that we might eventually get into about how she gets that eye of hers, how she meets Hlifar, but I don't know for sure if we're going to get into that, so I'm not going to have any spoilers. But basically, they have a conversation that's much more candid. It's like, look, you have the ring. Look, we can't do anything about you guys having the ring, but we're going to try and get you out of here. There's a ship called the Antelope. You guys need to... well, that happens later, pardon me. There's a candid conversation about the Triton script that is written into these bodies. So that body that they detected while they were coming down the road, that was desecrated in the back of Masoli and Shivers' cart. Masoli and Shivers show these markings to each of the individuals. Von Beck, having been a sailor previously, recognizes these symbols as being a script that he used to see on water barrels of things that they used to trade with the Salians to the south every once in a while, but he didn't know where it originally came from. Because of the connection between Gorstag and Masoli gives Gorstag some information because Masoli already knows that they're going to be tied up with other stuff, and is basically like, hey, can you go and research what in the world is going on with these markings? If you could do that for us, we know that they're someplace west of the Cape on an island somewhere, but we don't know. Shivers and I cannot afford to go. We've got other issues being seekers. So if you can go and run this down for us, we would be most appreciative. Then at the end of all of this, they bring everyone together, and basically Masoli is like, look, we know that you guys have the ring. We can't take the ring from you, but there are others who are not so inclined to listen to what the charter specifically tells them to do. There are other individuals in the Seekers who are willing to bend the rules here or there, or get people who are not so inhibited to be able to accomplish the tasks that they need to accomplish for the kingdom as a whole. But Masoli being a much more lawful individual, and Shivers just wanting to be there to save his own hide, and doesn't want to, you know, basically get killed by these things that are written on his bones. They're like, we can give you 24 hours until I have to process the report, but you guys need to get out of town. There's a ship that's in the harbor. It's called the Antelope. If you go there, they're basically like, we know that they're merchants. We know that they're supposed to be leaving soon. That's probably your best bet of getting out. And so with all of that, basically they're like, thank you. There's like a, there's kind of, they overhear an emotional kind of thing between Masoli and Shivers, where Masoli says, Masoli tells Shivers, you need to get out of here too. I'm going to take the heat for this. Thank you for treating me like basically like an actual sentient being that has feelings and emotion. I appreciate that. And then basically the party leaves. They go down to the Antelope. They help the crew unload some stuff. And then the captain is basically like, look, the captain's name is Eklid Barrett. And he's like, look, I can't specifically allow you onto this voyage. Only the individual who charters it can. And if we want to just wait for him, then as long as he's okay with it, I'll be okay with it. This was mostly a conversation between Von Beck and Eklid. The rest of the party is basically helping to move the stores onto the ship as it's leaving on the next tide. The individual who's chartering the vessel, who was discussed with them earlier as being an old friend from Dea Sol, his name is Kolmbluth. He is the leader of a group of people known as Lathander's Long Haul. They are a mercantile company, and they will move anything but people, or anything but unwilling people. They do not traffic sentient beings who do not want to move. Basically, the party is like, hey, we need to call in a favor. We're friends of Dawn and Dea. Can you do us a solid and get us out of here? And Kolmbluth is basically like, okay, I will do you a solid as long as you work for the captain on the voyage over and basically earn your keep. And so after they had already had the conversation with Eklid, Eklid was like, yeah, they already helped start moving stores on board the ship. They're fine with me as long as they work. And Kolmbluth looks at Von Beck, who's kind of taken leadership of this particular portion, and is like, okay, cool. You, Von Beck, you are responsible for these individuals while they're on Captain Barrett's vessel. If there are any problems, then I will have no qualms basically throwing you overboard. And that is where we end Session 8. This is the end of specifically my kind of strict railroad. This is where I kind of take the reins off and let the party do a little bit more of what it is that they want from here on forward. This is the main kind of building blocks of the story have been in place, have been set in stone. You now have the ring, you have the rapier. They're a mated pair. They're very, very important to the outcome of the success of the kingdom against outside invaders, which we know there's a threat that is coming, which is the elves. We don't know how long that we have until the Athenian elves get over here, but we know that things are starting to build to a boiling point. We are basically, at this point, exiles within the kingdom itself, so we can't necessarily go back to Hetham and just do everything that we want and not go out and kind of hand this stuff over specifically because we have a calling to give it to a king, not just a group of counselors. They need to give it to the actual king. So there's kind of that tie-in, and they have the means and opportunity to go places through Homebrew. Now, he is a merchant, and so he himself has to be motivated to go and do things, but there are going to be open opportunities down the line for these players to basically use that resource to go where it is that they want to go within reason. As far as overall success of the first 8 sessions, what my outline was for these players to accomplish and getting all of the kind of the setup dealt with, I think overall it was very successful. I felt like as a DM, I was running some of my best D&D that I've ever run. I was really feeling in the groove, although I feel like for me personally, it was a very good stepping stone to be able to allow these players to get into character, although there is a later session where I think I made better decisions than I made in these first 8 sessions. But this is kind of, as far as rating myself for how I executed my railroad, I feel like I did a good job keeping the players engaged, keeping the storyline flowing, and not making it feel, it felt more like a linear story than it did like a specific railroad, although this particular setup where they leave the town on the Antelope itself and get involved with Homebrew, which is, again, because they need a vessel to move around because they are fugitives. That portion, all of that leading up and all the things that they needed to do and accomplish and getting them all of the things, I felt like 9.5 out of 10 from my point of view, just looking back on it. And, you know, I think that is something, a tool that I might use in the future of running campaigns, is having a couple, 2 or 3 sessions that are basically like, you have to go by my storyline kind of as a prologue, and then after that I'm willing to open it up a little bit more within reason. I thought it was very successful, and how the rest of the campaign has progressed has really, it has felt like that was the correct choice. So I'm very happy overall with how all of this played out. There are a couple of things here or there where obviously I had been out of the groove of DMing for a little while, and I needed to make corrections to rules, like my rules and understanding of how 5th edition worked, having been in Pathfinder for so long. And I'd been in only basically playing Pathfinder for a little over 2 years at that point, both 1st and 2nd edition. So there was stuff within 5th edition that I needed to relearn, but very successful overall for me looking back. And I think that all of the players that I had would agree. Obviously, they were very engaged. One of the other things that I had done differently for this session is that there is an individual, Laurence, who we had brought in previously to one of my campaigns, and really I brought him in as a player kind of halfway through because he was looking for a group to play in. Unfortunately, timing didn't really work out for him to be a player in this campaign, but brought him kind of in along the side. Just we talk about D&D and campaigns and stuff that we played in or ran, and having him kind of, he played the character of Shivers for this particular interaction. And he, for the next couple of sessions, would kind of sit by my side and be my co-DM, kind of keeping me pointed in the right direction for stuff that we had discussed. So using him as a resource to be able to make sure that the kind of the end points of some of the points of the story moving forward, very helpful. But just wanted to make sure to mention that Laurence was at my side, and this is kind of the first of the next couple of sessions where he's going to be alongside and kind of helping to aid me and run the mess that is the next few sessions of this campaign. that kind of covers everything that I wanted to talk about. I hope that you have enjoyed listening to this continuation of Telling of the Tales and my insight as a DM, and I hope that we will see you soon. One last thing. One of our players, the players for Milo, basically said something really dumb one day, at least dumb in all of our opinions, and we thought it was absolutely hilarious, so we had shirts made for the actual campaign, and that is hindsight is 50-50. And so that, going forward, is going to be our slogan. So, hope you enjoyed, and remember, hindsight is 50-50.